Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Andy and Marty Make a Friend. Continuing our jaunt through the world of darkness, this time we're talking about Werewolf the Apocalypse, where you have to stop the apocalypse. I got that far in the book. Yep. So we the last episode was very focused on Vampire the Masquerade, and we'll come back to Vampire at a later date. We've still got lots of stuff to talk about with Vampire. We only covered 7 clans of the main 13, and then there are still bloodlines and other sects and anarchs. We were just talking about anarchs off stream. So gonna throw you under the bus, Marty. What's Werewolf about? Because
okay. Yeah, full disclosure, I went into this idea of like, oh, we totally got to talk about Werewolf sometime. Because I keep remembering, oh man, I love Werewolf. Getting back under the hood of Werewolf, I barely know where to start, and that's where we're going to start. I barely know where to start. Vampire is very clearly, hey, you can play the Lost Boys, you can play whatever. Werewolf was a natural extrapolation of that, of like they had mentioned werewolves in Vampire. Like, they were the lupines and whatnot. They were a natural enemy of vampires, as was, Werewolf versus Dracula or whatever back in the Hammer horror days and stuff like that. Or the Universal days when they started to really spin out into, a shared universe. And then Bill Bridges, I believe, is probably the name that is most associated with it, took that and made it like this earth punk, just super environmental messaged, like Aboriginal fetishism, like just you're monster superheroes, but you're also monsters. Like, it is just, it does not fit on the back of the box. In order to explain what's inside this box, you have to keep turning the box. But it's amazing. I stand by it's amazing. We're going to, a lot of this is going to be me being, and then it gets really weird. Because that's just unavoidable at this point. And then it gets really weird, and it does so almost immediately. So we're going to get into that. This isn't something where, hey, did you want to play Lon Chaney? No. This is much more, hey, do you want to kind of cosplay as like a Native American environmental activist who goes to a shadow world and fights monster bugs who represent pollution? If so...
Yeah. No, go ahead. Sorry.
I've got the game for you. It's...
Honestly, the thing that I can think of that is most like it in pop culture is Twilight.
Oh, okay.
Like, it's, in Twilight, the werewolves are all of a specific tribe of Native Americans. They just hate vampires because they can tell they are, corrupt predators and stuff like that. They don't turn into, they just turn into big wolves. Like, that's one of the big differences. But when they hit puberty, and they are just born that way. It's not a curse. It's just...
Right.
So...
Which, yes, in this, it's not a curse. Actually, that's sounding... Yeah. So if you've seen Twilight, you're closer to the world of darkness than you thought.
Man, Stephanie Meyer is so full of shit when she says she never read anything about any of it. She fell asleep on a pile of World of Darkness books or something.
Oh, most certainly. Oh, and actually, the Underworld movies actually got sued by White Wolf back in the day because they were clearly taking a bunch of their shit. No, it's fine. And they admitted they had the books on, around. Is it Charles Dance? Is Charles Dance in the first one of them? Anyway, born to play adventurers, so absolutely. Why wouldn't you?
He's in Dracula Untold.
Charles Dance and everything. You know what I mean?
He's in a lot of very weird things.
Yeah. All right, so Werewolf the Apocalypse, where, yes, you are correct that you are fighting off apocalypses.
Liz says Bill Nighy is in it. Are you thinking of Bill Nighy instead of Charles Dance?
Okay. Oh, I think it is Bill Nighy. That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Sorry, another kind of looks gaunt.
Yes. They good at playing villains.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so first things first, because one of the things, like getting back under the hood of Werewolf the Apocalypse, and apologies to any of my ex-bosses or colleagues who do stumble across this video. It's not even that I know it's problematic. It's more I'm worried it's problematic. Like, looking back on it, it's like, oh, yeah, this is very... I was saying right before the stream, this is clearly written by, like, 4 cool white dudes in the 90s. It definitely has a lot of Aboriginal, like, kind of First Nation, Aboriginal, not even fetishism, but it's clearly going for an aesthetic. Now, mind you, by Aboriginal, I still mean, like, Scandinavian Aborigines. Like, I mean, Celts and Picts and old-timey Russians and things like that. Old folk traditions and old spook stories writ large or whatever. So it's not just Native American, or First Nation, but it really is going for that kind of painting with all the colors of the wind kind of like spirituality. Very animistic, which again is not exclusive to this, but it couches itself in a lot of terms and skins of this thing that without reflecting on it before I got back into it, there was a lot of me going, oh, I don't know how great that is. It's
the version we were looking at, 20th anniversary, is at this point itself 10 years old. So a lot has happened in that last 10 years of, kind of this reflection of what TTRPG space does look like and what, sort of appropriation and colonialism. And look, I mean, there's a lot of colonialism in this book, but I don't think it's necessarily portrayed in a positive light. It's just, they're just kind of listing things and you're like, yeah, that's definitely not good. Like, and it's, it's...
Yeah, you will hate white people more reading the history of werewolves. Don't worry. Like, it's not ever trying to paint colonialism as good. There are 3 First Nation tribes of werewolves. There's 2 now. That should tell you how that went. And the aggressors are definitely European werewolves, who are largely the problem in that relationship. They don't confuse any of that. It's just weird because now instead of being... Andrew Jackson and smallpox blankets and, colonial aggression, it's kind of a cool territory war with werewolves. Like, there's a coolness added to it that doesn't belong, but to their credit, they were more explaining history through this mythology they'd created, not excusing or trying to make it rad. Very much there's current animosity about, hey, yeah, remember that? That pervades this entire series. And in fact, I kind of like that about it. It is like werewolves are this collective whole, these protectors of the earth, and they cannot, sorry, but we should play the Defenders of the Earth theme. But they can't get along any better than anyone else. In fact, because they're giant rage monsters, it's worse. Like, it's so much worse. They are all of us gross and bare in an interesting way. So, but I may also, I'm an old white. I may occasionally use a word that used to be cool sometime in 1994, or at least wasn't known as not cool. I'm trying not to. I'm going to try not to. I'm going to avoid that as much as I can. I may misspeak. There's actually terminology in this game that I understand is problematic, though I'm not entirely sure why or where some of it comes from, and they've never changed it, so I don't know. Like, métis is, or metis was what I always called it because I was dumb and 15 at the time, but métis is a kind of First Nation family in Canada, and I think it's just simply that they were treated quite poorly, which you'll notice is true of Aboriginal cultures everywhere. So I think there was just kind of it's not cool that they use that word for this like game term because that culture was treated quite poorly. I don't know the history of Canadian First Nation, so I'm not going to get into it. I also don't have another word for it. They never replaced it. They never addressed it. So I don't know if I saw a post once that said, I don't think that's cool, or if there's an actual movement behind it, that's not cool. I don't know. I'm going to try not to step in it. I apologize if I do. I beg of you to believe that it is my ignorance and not my malicious forethought that would have me do that. So that's first thing, just in case, because a lot of this, it just felt a little weird. It's a rad game, though, and I want that to come through. I don't want this to be me apologizing for things I enjoyed at 15. I do want to start selling you on the radness of this game. But I want to, since my knee jerked upon reading through it, Andrew, I don't know how much you had that kind of reaction.
No, very, very, yes.
Yes,
I did. I also was, I don't want to say cringing, but it was a lot of, I would pause and go, is that okay?
Yeah.
It's just a lot, there is a lot of appropriation of terms that I would consider kind of emblematic of like indigenous cultures and like even the pop culture version of indigenous cultures. It like, you know, how every Native American in Marvel Comics is somehow a shaman and also like why is Forge magic? Forge isn't magic. Like that's the exact opposite of Forge.
Yeah.
Like
yeah. No, yeah. And Dani Moonstar, one of my favorites, but she literally fights a demon bear because yes. And so, but yeah, that's a great way of putting it. It's pop culture's version of those things, which I think is part of what makes your knee jerk a little bit. You know, it's the way the Vistani, you know, are a fantasy trope of a real life peoples that continue to get away with it for so long because they scratched the name off and called it something different. But that is no longer cool. When I was growing up, there was a book with the G word on the cover because, so, again, if I accidentally misuse a term or we enter into some problematic territory, it's either me trying to factually describe what's in the book or it's me growing up in a time where the G word wasn't called the G word. So those are some caveats up front. And I just wanted to feel better going into this video with them. And again, it's possible upon further reflection, because this was really a skim to try and refresh myself, some of this stuff would hold up better than others, and maybe it does. I will definitely tell you it's cool. It's a fun game to play. It would be a fun game to play, provided you know everyone's pretty comfortable with what you're playing. You'd want to get some of that up front. And I'd be interested, you know, if, you know, a Native American or, you know, First Nation or whatever would kind of be like, oh, actually, I think that's cool the way that they represent animism. Or if they'd be like, I think that's fucked the way that's my grandfather's name and it's a cool werewolf form that you're using or something. You know, I don't know.
Right.
All right. So that's the CW up front. Let's get into the weeds a little bit. As I was almost apologizing to Andy before the stream, this game belies description. It refuses to obey a strict law of, oh yeah, it's a cool game about this. Its big concept is this.
Like I did not. I've never played Werewolf. I will. Let me say that now. I've never played Werewolf. I have read part of the rule book, and yeah, I don't know if I could accurately. I mean, I think I can, but like I don't know what a session of this would look like. Like I don't know. You're. I don't even know. Please continue.
I almost wanted to let you go just because. I think that first impression might be interesting. But yeah, all right. So let's actually begin at the beginning because I think one of the coolest things about Werewolf is its fiction. It does not have the kind of rich tapestry, although it eventually developed it. It does not come out of the box with the rich tapestry of, and then the Ventrue controlled Rome, and the Bruja controlled Carthage, and so that period of history is the Bruja and the Ventrue actually banging heads together. There's some of it, we've already alluded to the fact that white colonialist wolves came over and started clashing immediately with their lost three cousins, but their animism, their kind of world theology is pretty rad, and it's one of the greatest stories I've ever heard for it. And I say that only with slight hyperbole. I genuinely dig their origin story, their cosmology. That's the word I was looking for. I was trying to buy time. Their cosmology is super rad. So much so that me and two of my best friends growing up used this cosmology to determine our nicknames coming up. Like, I think it's just one of the coolest stories ever. So, in the beginning, and if I was really cool, I would have prepared a whole, like, we could have dimmed the lights and I would have had smoke rising up. But, like, because it's supposed to be this oral tradition. And remember, oral traditions all over the world. Anyway, so in the beginning, there was the wild. W-Y-L-D, because of course. And the wild is raw, untamed creation. It's just yang, if you're familiar with the Taoist yang. It's just wild, no pun intended, energy. It is raw creation. It is unformed. It refuses to be shaped. It is creation. But it can't create. It is raw creation, but it can't create because it can't concentrate long enough. It is an ADD child with too many blocks in front of it. And so it determines for itself, I believe, some purist might be like, actually, this happens first, but like, just let me tell it because it's an oral tradition. That's how they go. It knows that it wants to create, it wants to use all this energy to do something, but it can't form it. So it dreams for itself, kind of a guardian, a shaper, the weaver. It creates this static, stayed state. Aha! That's pretty fun S's. This creature, this infinitude, this godlike cosmic being that starts taking the wild and weaving it into reality. Right? It starts calcifying it, as the game term uses. I don't actually know that means what that means, but it starts calming the wild down and smoothing it out to create the universe, the cosmos. The wild creates and creates and creates, and the weaver weaves and starts making all of these other things. Well, as any dyad could tell you, there needs to be a third. And the third is the worm. W-Y-R-M, because of course. And the worm's job is to, if the weaver makes too much, it breaks it. You're going too far. And if the wild creates too much or gets too out of control, it eats it. It's like, no, that's too much. The weaver can't keep up. And it's balance. The worm is balance. And thus is the triad. It's the worm, the weaver, and the wild. And together, they start making Celestines, which are godlike level, but like very old-timey, the sun, Helios. And Gaia, their best child, right? Gaia is going to be the center of the story in a minute. Save her for later, but we're going to concentrate on her. Their greatest creation together is Gaia. The world. The womb world that is their favorite child. And they also create Luna, because why not? So they create the cosmos, but they really focus, the way that any good mythology really likes to end at our borders. They create this world. And they are so far above anything that humans can or certainly Guru, which is what werewolves are, by the way. I will start using that term without having introduced it. Guru means werewolf. If I start using it, it means werewolf. So, the wild wilds, the weaver weaves, and the worm referees. As the story goes, the weaver gains sapience. And put an asterisk next to that because I have to complain about sentience versus sapience later. The weaver gains sapience, which is awareness, which is what sapience means. It's why you're Homo sapiens. Anyway, sorry, I've already mixed it in. The weaver's sitting there just kind of like, oh man, I'm just making some great stuff. Everything I do is really great. And look at the wild over there. He's just kind of like, spazzing out. But like everything I'm doing is great. And everybody loves it. And everybody loves me. So he starts weaving more and more. And faster and faster. And the worm's just kind of like, hey, slow down over there. Hey, let's knock it off. Let's slow it down. All right, I'm going to start destroying this. You can't keep making this stuff. Look, I think the Wild looks like he's in pain. Like, you need to stop. Like, stop it over there. So the worm has to get out of the referee chair and go over and be like, hey, knock it off. So the Weaver starts weaving the worm into the pattern. And the worm's just kind of like, Nate, no, knock it off. Knock it off. That's my sweater. No, that's me. Hold on. Those are my fingers. Those are my hands. And the worm starts to get trapped in the pattern. And so the worm starts thrashing about and like gnashing its teeth and being like, no, this isn't how it's supposed to go. You're supposed to weave the Wild and I'm supposed to referee. And it slowly goes mute because the Weaver is weaving so fast and so meticulously to make order and pattern out of the Wild that the worm starts to get trapped in here. And the worm starts to go insane. And the worm, thrashing around in the pattern, starts to disrupt the pattern. And in its madness, instead of being the balancer, it becomes the great corrupter. And that is how Werewolf starts. I haven't even gotten to a werewolf yet, people. This is, it's amazing. So that's the creation story, and I love it. I love it, and I hope some of that came through at least towards the tail end of that. I just think it's the best bonkers triad, like, hey, you need 3 corners of a table here. This is it. Like, I think it's just so neat an idea. The Wild isn't naturally good, right? It doesn't have a good guy. Wild can't control itself. And that will be clear once we get into some of the themes and stuff you can do. The Wild is untamed yang. The Weaver is careless. By that I mean it doesn't care. Uncaring yin. And the worm's supposed to be that white sinuous line between them, or the small thin sinuous line between them, but it's gone fucking mad. So instead, it's those 2 little floating eyes. And so yes, the worm, the balancer, has gone insane, and in fact, itself has a dissociative personality problem where it splits into 3, and we'll start talking about them later. But they are the Beast of War, the Eater of Souls, and the Defiler. So cool guys, they sound like. So yes, so the Weaver starts putting all this into the pattern, and the pattern in this case is Gaia. Remember, that's their favorite little girl child. That's their baby. But so writ large, as they're all kind of looking down at the looking pool that is the cosmos, all of this turmoil that they just went through seeps into the world. And so early on, corruption bled into the pattern. Now, it should be no surprise that the Weaver likes people, because people are makers, they're doers, they're problem solvers. They see a thing and are like, the people build walls to keep the world out. Nothing else does that, right? So the Weaver likes people, and they kind of become its champions. However, they dig, right? They hew, they cut, they build, they mortar, they stick things together with their sticky fucking people fingers. They're gross. And the worm, who's kind of stuck in this pattern right now, doesn't have anywhere to go. It's stuck. It can't do anything itself. So all it can do is let itself leak into the pattern and corrupt. And so men are also cunning and deceitful and just shitty. It's a real pro-human message on this stream so far. But it turns the hearts and minds of men towards greed, towards lust and envy, right? All the seven majors, all those things. It thrives on that, because then men start to destroy, right? Men start to tear down. Men start to, so it's lashed out insane way of trying to still control this pattern is to not let people get too far. And the Wild is just, still out there. It doesn't have enough, it can't hold the thought long enough to save anybody. All it can do is be like, well, I'll make the grass grow. Grow, grow, grow. Wild's a bit of an idiot in this one. Which leaves our poor baby child Gaia to fend for herself. That and her little sister looking down on her, Luna. Gaia has to make her own protectors, has to make something that will save her from her 3 dads. What a fun sitcom it'll be. She has to make her own defense mechanisms to defend her against her 3 dads. So she starts taking champions all across the world, but we're going to concentrate on the Garou, the werewolves. She starts choosing champions to help her control the people and to tend the wild and to make this whole thing work, right? They're her antibodies. They're her, they're her defense mechanisms. So the Garou, the great wolf people, they're basically, they were wolves and people, and now they're wolf people. Thanks in part because Luna, the little magic sister that floats around and keeps an eye on things, makes sure that, her dress is zipped up and her hair's out, the back of her dress. Luna's kind of like, cool, you choose your champions and I'm going to gift them. I'm going to give them rad shit they can do. And so Luna, the moon, gives werewolves rad shit they can do. And the wolves are kind of like, cool, appreciate it. We can do rad shit. What do you need us to do? We need you to keep people in check. We need you to keep society we need you to keep the weaver in check, right? There's the wild, there's the weaver, and there's supposed to be a third person here, and that person's gone. That person's asleep at the wheel or just missing. So we need someone to keep this balance. So, for the most part, and we're going to skip over the history section rather quickly here, but at a certain point, werewolves are like, cool. When there gets to be too many humans, start killing them until there's a decent amount again. Got it. And when they start pushing too far into the wilderness, start trashing their shit and breaking their houses. Got it. If they're made of straw, blow them down. If they're made of sticks, kick the shit out of that. If it's bricks, we're still working on bricks. All right, but we think we've got...
Start eating grandmas, taking their clothes.
Yeah. Look, whatever it takes. And so that will be kind of important because humanity, who is always kind of... And this is true, right? This is true. Humanity's always held this weird place for wolves as, like, this apex predator... Even though largely, like, it takes like 6 of them to take you down. Like, they're not particularly, like, I mean, they're cool in a Dave Filoni way, but like, right, like they're not.
This is Dave Filoni's favorite role playing game, right?
Almost certainly, this dude can't get enough. So yeah, like, but humans have mythologized wolves above like any other kind of predator in this way. Like, so it's almost strange because they don't necessarily seem deserving of the title. Well, that's because we have this racial memory of these things used to every 13 days be like, nope, too many babies. We're going to come in, we're going to push over some apple carts, and we're going to eat a baby. Sorry, that's just the way it is. And this will create something that will affect your modern game called the delirium, which is, as a modern human, if they see you do some crazy wolf shit, which you're not supposed to do because of another game term, but if they see you do some crazy wolf shit, their mind glosses over with this kind of like old terror. You know, like it's got an E at the end of it. It's so old. Oldie terror. Like, and your brain glosses over it. You become a giant wolf man and murder a bunch of things, turn back into a human and you're like, fuck, I need to get home. And you run away. And everyone's like, yeah, some psycho pulled out a knife and started stabbing everyone. Right? They can't fit in their brain that a giant monster man appeared in the middle of a crowd and started throwing people about like Venom. They need to imagine that, I don't know, some normal serial killer dude did this, you know, or something like that. So that all goes back to this ancient memory before memory when we were kind of standing up to look what was over the tall grass and found there were 3 werewolves standing around us and be like, get back down into the grass. I'm not going to tell you twice. So at least now our story has some werewolves in it.
It only took 30 minutes.
It only took 30 minutes. This is the setup of where werewolf wears. Sorry, I've lost the thread on that one.
Where's wolves?
Where's wolves? So that's your origin story. That's your basic setup. As you can tell, there's not a Longini in sight. There's not a lot of any of that. Inevitably, these werewolves break themselves into 13 tribes, which is kind of weird because some of it's based on like literal boundaries of like, we come from Russia. We hail from Russia. And we hail from Eastern Europe. Well, we haven't divided a lot of the map up yet, have we? We're really in this primary band here. And then others are kind of based around a certain like philosophy of like, well, we live with humans because if the closer you are to them, the better you can see and understand what they're doing. And yeah, we get used to a little bit of trash, and a little bit of trash is okay. Whereas other people are just kind of like, any trash, destroy. So there's these 13 tribes. I'll nameplate them a little bit later, but this is the background setting of Werewolf the Apocalypse. We haven't even gotten to the apocalypse yet, but it's coming.
We barely got to werewolves.
Mm-hmm. You're starting to see my and Andy's problem.
As soon as
Andy, are you with us so far?
This is making so much more sense than the book, and it's still, well, because I think I misread it as Gaia created the worm, Wild and Weaver, not the other way around. And then I was just like, I don't understand Werewolf's motivation. Like, why do you hate your defenders of Gaia and you hate two of the things she created? So it makes more sense that it's the other way around.
Mm-hmm. So let's move forward into what's this game about for you, the player. Stepping back, if you remember, I mentioned a lot in Vampire that, and it's impossible not to compare this to Vampire. It's literally the second game in this game line, and it's obviously a response in a lot of ways too. That it was also kind of the next natural step because they had already introduced this idea of out there are lupines, these werewolf creatures. So in Vampire, it is not uncommon for your game to be like, okay, we're starting. Andy, what's your character doing? I strike off on my own. Cool. Okay. We'll get back to you. Marty, what's your character doing? Yeah, I've got to take care of a lot of my own shit. Cool. Jim? Oh yeah, man. I got to meet with my sire, and remember that brother that I'm in like this whole like thing with? Yeah, I need to take care of that. Cool. So none of you are going to be in the same place. Neat. I guess we'll go back to the top. So Werewolf has a natural response to that, which is you are naturally drawn together in groups. You have a pack, right? That's one of the cool things about wolves is they travel in packs. They travel in big family units, and they're called packs. We also have some fundamental misunderstandings of wolves that deal with alphas and betas and gammas and shit. That is unfortunately built into the DNA of this game because that was the pop psychology of the time. So this idea that wolves do that.
But I do, and I don't know if this is true in other editions or if only in this one, in 20th anniversary, but I do like that the game does make it explicit that the alpha can change depending on the situation.
Oh yes,
so
yes.
It's good point. If you are in a fight, obviously your strongest fighter, the human variant champion fighter, is in charge.
Yes.
But if you're in a social situation, the bard is in charge, and they all have names that are hard to remember for me.
What's hard to remember about Ragabash, Theurge, Philodox, Galliard, and Arun?
I think I want to be a jelly bean. I got it. They're the bards.
A Galliard? Got it. No, yes, they're nonsense words, and they're fun. Those I can rattle off the top of my head. The 13 tribes I had to look back up. And in part because I always had, and this is anecdotal, but it still pertains, but like with the vampire clans, I would go through them. I start at the top of the alphabet, and I just start listing them as I remember seeing them in the book. And also I know, like, wait, this is too big a leap between, B and M. Oh, Gangrel, that's right. That's what I'm missing or whatever. With werewolves, I don't know if you noticed this, but it's like a couple and then 7 S's and then a couple more. So it's really tough because you still are going to find yourself like, I've got 11. I'm sure I'm missing at least 2 S's, and I don't remember which ones.
The Silver Sneakers or something.
The Silent Striders.
I was close.
The Silver Fangs. You were very close. For having just crammed this fairly recently, you're doing great. So yes, you have to be packs. You meet in cairns, which is basically like, Central Park has the Cairn of the Green, right? Like it's, and there are representatives of a bunch of tribes there and whatever. And so, your tribe is one unit, your local pack. Well, your pack might be part of a cairn. Like there's a bunch of ways that this stuff gets mixed in, and it's all pretty rad. And again, Andy, you said you weren't sure what a session of this looks like, and it does look pretty great, but it occasionally does kind of push and pull against itself like that. So you create a pact, and you straight up fight monsters. This is a lot more D&D than Vampire's ever going to be. You straight up fight monsters. but you fight so many monsters. Oh my god. Okay, so you fight spirits, like spirit monsters. You fight things that have been corrupted by spirits, so thing spirit monsters. You fight actual humans. Sometimes they're bad humans. Sometimes they're just humans. You are a bad guy in their story. You're only the good guy of your story, and that's going to be important to remember. Andy, I think you even said you saw somewhere online that, well, werewolves are the good guys. I would dissuade you of that notion immediately. Yeah. You are not. You are only the good. I mean, and you're the good guys of your story. The minute you try and describe a werewolf game that you and your friends played to someone else, they're going to look at you in horror as you describe the terrible things you did. And you're kind of be like, what? Where did I lose you? Oh, is the rending the secretary apart?
Was that all the people I ate?
For an evil construction company. I thought I led with that. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, you fight humans, you fight vampires, you can fight mages, you go to a shadowy realm and fight the shadows of those things. You can straight up D&D style go to other realities. Like there are pocket realms in the Umbra, which is the shadow world. And you can go to realms, basically like Stygia or the Abyss or Pandemonium, or like if you can go there in D&D, you could go there in Werewolf. You want a place that's all fire and heat? Go for it. There's a fire plane. It's not called that necessarily, but you can go to an all fire place and as a couple werewolves go and have some firefighting adventures. Like, cool. There's for sure elemental planes. There's dark reflections of parts of our world. There's superb, pristine glades that have never been touched. Yeah, it's just so weird, you guys. It's so weird, but it's really fun and cool. It's just really hard to fit into a couple hour video. All right. So yeah, you do raw action shit. You're naturally inclined to fight. If you created a werewolf with 1 strength, 1 dexterity, and 1 stamina, if you take your war form, which is your giant lurching beastman thing, all of your stats lurch to the height of human potential. Like you're going to be as strong and as fast and better than any other human being for being a weakling. If you have anything more than that, which you're almost naturally going to do, because why would you have done that to yourself in the first place? You are well above the human potential for things, and you can rip things in half with your claws and your teeth.
You're an Olympic level athlete.
Yes. I have seen this game described as tree-hugging rage furries. It's not inaccurate, but I do think it really is taking some of the cooler things out of it. Unless all those things are your favorite things, in which case, yeah, no, brother, I've got the game for you. If you'd like to be a tree-hugging rage furry, yep, that's what it says on the tin. So because of that, let me see. Where do I want to go from here? Any thoughts, Andy? This is where the mirror starts to shatter in every direction, so I'm just not sure which direction.
Yeah. So. Man, I feel like there was. Yeah, I did think it was interesting when I saw someone say like, "Oh, well, the werewolves are the good guys," which one I think is interesting that one the person wasn't like hunters are the good guys, even though they're also not the good guys. Mm-hmm. But yeah, rage isn't a cool superpower. Like
that's right.
If you get one thing out of Logan, the movie, it's that rage is stupid. Like.
Yeah.
Like it's that it doesn't make you look cool. It makes you look like a lunatic who's hitting a tire with a shovel on the side of the road. But
the tire doesn't care and the shovel doesn't care. Yeah, you just look like an idiot
in front of your clone daughter.
Yes.
But like especially reading through the book where I'm just like, yeah, but all you do is like slaughter people. Like there are like 3,000 years of human history where all you did was, yep, You stood up. No, we don't like that anymore, and so we ate you.
Yep.
Well, okay, whoa. Carts? No carts, everybody. I thought we said no carts. That guy looked at me. I ate him.
Yeah. No, it's we were making fun of knights and samurai a couple streams ago because they're just tax collectors and bullies a lot of the time, and they hide behind their chivalric codes or whatever, the code of Bushido or whatever. But no, you're jerks. You're landed or the servants of landed people, and I think the same is true for werewolves. They have self-mythologized themselves into being the good guys, and in fact, the last and only true good guys. And from their perspective, they're right. From anyone else's perspective, they're murder zealots. And I suggest you embrace that dichotomy at the table. Like some things to consider when you're playing a werewolf game is like with all like the Umbra. I keep calling it the Shadow World, which is basically you step beyond the veil, and there's our world, except it's Miyazaki flavored. It's weirdly interpreted. Its metaphors are real all of a sudden. It's very. Was it Shin Megami Tensei? Is that? I'm playing Persona 5, but I forget the core series.
Oh yeah,
it's Shin Megami Tensei.
Shin Megami Tensei. Yep.
It's very that. There's this world next door where metaphors are real and living, and some of them will talk to you. Yes. If a thing is loved enough in this world, it will have a shadow on the other side. And that thing might actually have, like, a teddy bear might be like, that little girl loves me so much. My name is Mr. Beans. And that teddy bear might be evil. But it also might be like a cool spirit guide of just like, no, I'm a spirit of love. What's the matter, dudes? You guys need to chill out. Fern Gully, everyone's favorite. I do love that movie. Tim Curry just sings a dastardly good song.
It's Robin Williams'
Fern Gully
most
is the werewolfinest
appearance.
Is just the werewolfinest thing. Like there's an evil, like sludge spirit that takes over machines to knock down more forests. That is an actual villain you can fight in Werewolf. In fact, it's every like third page is that thing.
I've also seen Captain Planet invoked a couple times.
It is.
Yeah.
I was saving that one for last, but the way that your humans are just scenery chewing villains that love pollution. You know how like in the real world, it's just you love money more than you care about other things? In Werewolf, no, you love pollution. Like you are that guy. It's not so much that you don't care. That's how it was born, maybe. You're like, but I'm making money, so what's a little bit of coal in the river? To the point of now, like, yes, Coal River. That is my name. I shall corrupt all the rivers. It gets kind of goofy pretty quickly, so you may as well embrace it, because there's a evil holding company called Pentex that is it's Captain Planet villains up and down. There's no other term for it. They get off on polluting. Like, it's just... It's not going to get less silly than that, so there you are. So you have actual evil corporation people that love pollution. You have pollution spirits and like sludge monsters and worm spirits. They're all corrupted by the worm, right? That's to tie this back into your... As the worm's thrashing around in its prison, it keeps disturbing the pattern so it breaks men's minds and hearts, and a spirit of a tree becomes the spirit of resentful trees. I don't know. Like it can twist and turn anything into the worst version of itself. So that's kind of, and so your werewolves who get to watch humanity walk around in this hellscape. Like literally you're looking at a city street and you're just kind of like, well, it's dirty, but it's my home. And that's Willie. And he, he works down at the bodega. And that's Fran, and she's cool, and yeah, it's a little dirty. It's a little, I'm sure, yes, I know everything pollutes. I've got an iPhone. I know that's not great and whatever, but I'm making do. This isn't the good place. I'm doing my best to be a good person. A werewolf looks at that same street and is filled with like literal supernatural anger at how dumb you all are. And how, what do you mean it's just an iPhone? Yeah, after 10 billion of you thought that, Like, there's no more, like, there's mercury rivers in fucking China right now. And kids who have, like, are going blind in other parts of the world. You know, all of this is a blight. You paved over paradise and made it a parking lot. I made that up just now.
It's really insightful and deep.
Pretty good, huh? Nobody take it. That's mine. OP, do you know how to steal?
And if you make it a song, make sure the title doesn't refer to that at all.
Okay, yeah. I think that's good. We'll bury the lead. So yeah, from the werewolf's point of view, they are the good guys here. But I just described any number of us and all of our friends and everyone you've ever known ever. And a good werewolf is one who recognizes it's not her fault. It's not her fault. It's not her fault. You want to see my iPhone? I don't want to see your iPhone. Thank you. Please keep walking before I murder you. That'd be great. I need to focus on the people who make the iPhone. That's who I'm going to do battle with. In, like, just rad superhero, I roll 20 dice to do a thing, like, adventures, too. Because, yeah, they get all that, you turn into a war monster, and you just get, like, double all your dice and everything. Dude, you roll trucks of dice in this game. And that's very satisfying. To a rock and roll soundtrack about hating bulldozers or something.
Well,
like it,
you know, when I'm saying they're not the good guys, it's not that they don't have a point of view. It's just, and you know, obviously pollution. I think pollution is bad. I will take that strong stance here and now.
Wow, both.
I am on the side of Captain Planet and the Planeteers. I don't think Jeff Goldblum should be dumping sludge in the ocean for no reason.
Well, you know I don't like politics in games, but go on.
But yeah, like it's taking it to an extreme of you have to control your rage. Like that's the you get so mad at this that you turn into a giant monster. A monster. You're the Hulk. The Hulk is seen as a bad guy by a lot of people because he, you know, destroys cities sometimes. It's not necessarily his fault. He was chased there. General Thunderbolt Ross is an asshole wasting government resources in the desert trying to kill this thing that is clearly unkillable. Leave him alone. So it is just interesting to me that you clearly see yourselves as the heroes of your story in a way that even vampires can't justify that. It's just like, I'm not killing anybody. I'm drinking their blood. I'm manipulating them. Yes, like that's not great, but I'm not, you know, I'm just trying to make it as low impact as possible. You know, I try, you know, the beast I am, less the beast I become. Like I try and keep it on the DL. This 9 foot tall bus of fur came charging at me. And I don't know why. It turns out I smell bad to him.
Yeah, screaming about worms. I guess he had worms. That's the thing dogs get, right?
Yeah, I tried to give him a heartworm medicine, and it just he didn't like it. I was like, it's in a sausage.
Was not having it.
Just no.
Did not care for it.
But also, whenever you referred to the worm before I read this, I did think it was like WORM, and it was just a pile of writhing worms, not like a dragon.
No, yes. This is some archetypical spirit of yes. It is. It's got the Y in it. It is a worm, and yes, it is a dragon. It is, honestly, kind of tragic the way that most good mythologies are. It is also the villain of the piece, so don't feel too bad for it.
It's been driven mad by the Weaver.
Yes, and it twists and contorts. And there are plenty of werewolves who think the Weaver's the bad guy. They look past the worm. They're like, yeah, the worm is the symptom. The Weaver's the problem. The humans and their cities and their need to build. Even if they're just acting on some spiritual antecedent or, you know, that they need to do this, it's bad. That's the problem. Why are we focusing on the symptoms? We could be focusing on the problem. Cut off the money and the head will die, you know, like stuff like that. You can do all of that. So with vampire, you're kind of stuck to a certain amount of themes. I like how you said that. Like, vampires can't convince themselves they're the good guys. They can be the least bad guy they can, but like inherently they're predators. They're a predatory metaphor, at least. You know, like werewolves can lie to themselves that they're the good guys. And in fact, the more they separate themselves from humans and human concerns, the better they are. So a lot of werewolf games that I've seen and played and whatever, you more or less stay at the cairn all the time. Like with a vampire game, you'll go back and do something. With a hunter game, you'll like, well, I have to go to my day job and cover, or, you know, the wife's going to be suspicious that I'm out hunting mummies at night or whatever. Like with werewolf, you pretty much abandon that almost immediately to become a werewolf for the most part. There are certain tribes that don't do that as much. There, you could play a game where you still try to do people things, or you have a lot of kinfolk, which are breeding humans, basically. They're breeding stock. You know their names and they can be friends and family, but that is what they're there for. Do not become disillusioned with that. But there are also people that can help you out of like, look, I need to lay low for a couple days. The president of Exxon might be looking for me, so don't worry about it. Ooh, Sorry, Endron.
Thank you. It's totally distinct.
Totally different. This is more a Captain Planeteer kind of level where they celebrate.
Yeah. It's not Amazon, it's Pentex.
Yes.
Although Amazon was not really a thing when this...
No, I'd be interested to see...
They were probably a book website at that point still.
Well, and
the first time, when it originally came out in the
since I started talking about how problematic some of this is and might have aged poorly, might I point out that Onyx Path did just put out a recent update to the Pentex guide, which I am very fascinated in reading because they're a great bad guy. I mean, they are literally like... They are the patriarchy. They are the evil white tycoons. Yeah. Like... all of the, like, when people are kind of like, well, not everyone who's doing XYZ are evil. Okay, but imagine the evil version of them, and that's these guys.
Yeah. No, they're such a comic book villain. It's Roxxon. They're such a comic book villain, evil organization. And, that does just make it such a great bad guy, as also evidenced by Unsleeping City Season 2, where... fake Amazon is the bad guy, and it's just they're everywhere because they just own everything. Because
that's a great point because it's a very werewolf setup. I'm not caught up, but where I was leaving it, it was giving me good vampire or Pentex vibes. And it's little and insidious. Again, it's people. Everyone carries around an iPhone, tweeting about how someone else is killing the planet, right? Like, and again, I don't want to. I have a cell phone. Everyone has a cell phone. I'm not trying to belabor that point too much, but it is an ethical dissonance that you carry one of the worst polluting, kind of conflict-driven devices around to talk about how you're totally for like human rights or something like that. And again, we all live in an ethically disparate world. So we're all just doing our best. But again, step into the Umbra as a werewolf and rage against it. Like, this is a great game to go and tear apart every politician, certainly of the last 8 years, but really of the last 200. And before that, it's just Werewolf's a funner game if you're fighting machine monsters. And rail cars. Go beat up the evil version of JP Morgan. It's going to be fun. It's a great game to kind of get that out of your system. This is a very lefty game. I'd be very interested to see. We've been talking about, how like, well, Captain America is actually an alt-right symbol. Go fuck yourself. First off, he exclusively punched racists and fascists. Exclusively.
Exclusively his bad guys are racists.
Only villains are racists. But yeah, I would be very interested because it's in here. There is certainly room to be just a Swedish death metal douchebag in this game. Even still, you're a goddess worshipping like nature lover.
Explicitly in the 20th anniversary edition, fracking is listed as like the worst thing ever.
Yeah,
like it goes into detail about like how fracking is we did not talk about the comic at the beginning of this, which
we are welcome to.
I read and makes zero amount of sense. You said you understood more of it because you were familiar with the system. But
yeah, I even know like who some of those characters are.
Right.
Maria Cabra in particular.
But the finger steepling villain in it at some point just says like they're not even mining for anything with fracking, they're just doing it to fuck the earth. And it's like, wow.
With all the subtlety of a Jack Chick tract. If anyone's familiar with Jack Chick, where like everything is satanic panic and everything is of the devil. The Catholic Church is the one world church that's going to destroy us all. And like literally like it cuts to a witches cabal where they're like, yes, fuck Christ. Like that is Pentex. Because he's literally just kind of like, yeah, it's fracking. Fuck the earth, huh? He's actually steepling his fingers while he does it too. Like, it's just kind of like, fuck it. We're not even doing anything down there. We're just shooting bad stuff into the earth. Just for the vine. It's for the lols. Yeah, like, oh God, it's so fun. Because then you go kick the ass out of those people. But yeah,
I mean, catharsis, the role-playing game.
And now I want to take the needle swing back to like it might be a little problematic and it has some interesting like issues that might be exoticizing certain things or certainly fetishizing them or whatever. But it's an SJW's lefties fucking dream of, I'm going to get a case of beer. We're going to order out pizza and we're going to fucking smash the patriarchy tonight as murder furries. Who's in? I am playing a jackbooted lesbian who turns into a 7-foot fucking monster and is going to tear down patriarchy. Patriarchy is the spirit you guys are fighting tonight. Yeah. Actually, it's a many-wanged demon that lives in the Umbra.
And make sure to bring every D10 you have ever seen.
Borrow a friend's if they're not making it tonight, because you're going to need it to kick the many-wanged face of patriarchy into next week. It's going to be a fucking blast. And yes, you're playing murder hippies and murder hobos and murder lesbians. Yes, actually, I want to. I'm back, baby. I'm back on board. Werewolf fucking owns.
Yeah, like I definitely see the appeal. It's just there's so much about it where I'm just still confused. And I even said before the stream to Marty, it's just like I just need it to be explained to me by someone who fucking loves it. Which you even mentioned that when we were talking about vampire clans, where each clan is somebody's favorite. And you just need to talk to someone who fucking loves the Nosferatu or the Zamishi or the Gangrel. And then you'll be like, oh, that's rad as hell. Tell me more.
Yeah. And I'm feeling myself right now. I'm back, baby. All right. So, and God, like, all right. So you play, let's not skip ahead. You're playing a werewolf. You get to about the age of puberty, X-Men style, and become a werewolf. If you're a human being, you can also be a wolf. You could be born a wolf, like a little baby wolf.
And then you're like 2 or whatever when you change.
And then you're 2, and you start to go through weird changes where now you have hands where you didn't have anymore. And your mom and dad are kind of like, well, looks like we got to take him to the cairn. And they trot you down to a stone where there's a bunch of wolf people. That in a lot of the art just look like giant fursonas, by the way. So again, welcome. If these are your people, a lot of the art is going to be very pleasing to you.
On that level, when I was flipping through the tribe descriptions, I was disappointed when the art wasn't some cool giant werewolf, and I was just like, this is just a dude. Where's your rad werewolf form with your giant sword?
Sometimes there's dudes. That's a good point. Because like Black Furies is immediately like, yes.
And then Bonar is just like a dude, like he's wearing like just like a dirty sweater, and I'm like,
he's got a hairy arm and a wrench.
Oh, great.
So
the next one's wearing like no armor, but like just rad as hell.
Rad as hell. So you get to about puberty, you start to go through some mysterious changes, and then much like Grant Morrison's Invisibles, you are immediately drafted into an invisible war that's going on in the world around you, where every leftist zine that's ever been handed to you waiting for a train is true, and you can turn into a giant murder beast and do something about it. Also, there's a bunch of rad animistic aspects where you can talk to the spirits of telephones and shit, or go out into nature and talk to real like dryad tree spirits and stuff like that. So you get indoctrinated into some Native American light kind of new agey, kind of crunchy hippie stuff. Everyone's got some kind of deed name, so you're like Evan Starbright, and you're Fangs First, like everybody's got this kind of like really kind of tribal name, where again we might be back into problematic territory. But considering, again, Scandinavian, Celtic, Sub-Saharan Africa, Asia, you've got Gao the Ten-Handed and things like that. Like these kinds of like deed names and surnames and kind of things are not unique to any one place. So they tend to kind of have a certain flavor that might set off your radar. But I would defend them beyond that, of just kind of like any oral tradition always has... and that's Hannah, the mother of hundreds or whatever. And you're kind of like, well, that sounds cool, I guess. What did she physically birth 100 kids? That sounds tough. She sounds tough. And each has their own kind of naming conventions and stuff like that within their tribes that can be as lily white as the valley, or they can be super spiritual and stuff like that. So you go here, you're indoctrinated into this army, and you immediately go into a pack. And packs aren't, like, with vampires, you tend to join with other vampires that are about the same age. They kind of always, they go in some big embracing boom and stick 5 kids together at the kids' table. In Werewolf, as a 13-year-old, you might be there with, like, a 45-year-old veteran, a 30-year-old woman, 2 older kids of indeterminate age, and some wry, sarcastic, 20-year-old or something like that, right? There's no need to be at the same age because all of you can turn into 7-foot murder beasts. That part's going to take care of itself. Don't worry. And all of you are going to be fighting the same righteous fight. So you join, again, in every game I've ever seen and played, and I can imagine you don't need to play this way, but every game I've seen and played, you more or less stay there. You're a werewolf now. You leave because you can't go back, right? Like, not in the way that, like, well, I'm a vampire now, and everyone that I would know and love, I might hurt or whatever. Like, kind of the hurt part, but, like, now that you know that everything that's plugged into the wall is being, like, buzzed through with electricity spirits and, like, all kinds of Eberron level shit, if you want to keep it in D&D, like, you can't go, like, if you go back into your house now, all your super wolf hearing and sensitive nose and everything is just overwhelmed now. Like, every time you go back home, and like, things that used to not talk to you now. And you're getting angrier and angrier at the fact that your sister won't put down the fucking phone. Like, you are a danger to yourself and others. You may as well be around other wolves. So at least if you start to freak out about something, there's 3 more of them that can also turn giant and wrestle you to the ground and tell you to shush. Like, there is an actual, like, you're a mutant, right? I'm sorry, I'm struggling around for this vast metaphor as if you haven't all heard it already. It's Xavier School. You go to whatever version of Xavier School, except it's probably by a creek somewhere, and you live on Pride Rock. Every fucking werewolf game has a Pride Rock in the middle of it. And half the time, you might not be on terrestrial Earth. You might be in the spirit world a lot of the time. You can stay there all the time. Which is how werewolves get away with being werewolves a lot of the time. They're next door. They're in the world next door, so they don't need to be here all the time. It tends to be old places that still vibrate with that spiritual energy, and they try to protect it. They are trying to stay there. So, there's the Sept of the Green in Central Park. They tend to be in parks or still pure areas around things, or even I think I was thinking earlier that it would be neat to have like your actual like cairn is in the middle of like a mall or something, where in the middle it's kind of like this fountain and like this kind of like shitty Weaver tainted like throne to commercialism. But in the Umbra, there's some spiritual center of it that still remains. Like, it's just a glade that's untouched, this kind of oasis that's just... That fountain is actually our font of power, and we have to come here for meetings every Saturday, so it's a little awkward. You know, you can kind of create that kind of dissonance. If the metaphor, the shadow metaphor of it doesn't reflect the real world of it, you'd expect it to be like this spider webs on everything and just weird commercialized zombie drones walking around everywhere. But what if actually there's something kind of pure and untouched at the beginning of it? So now, and you're a werewolf now, and you live with your pack. Your pack's now your family, and your sept is kind of like your village. That's your governmental body. You have the eldest among you, or whoever's the most renowned, and they get to call all the shots, and everybody kind of falls in line a little bit. But you're living this very kind of nativistic kind of fever dream, where you probably don't wear a shirt that much anymore because you're fucking ripped now, dude. And so that's a lot. And then you go on strike missions, basically. You determine who your next target is. Gladiators taking over the mall. Fuck. And so now you and your boys are going to have to go as a pack and just fucking destroy this construction site, or go to the construction site and you step sideways. That's what moving between these worlds is. And you go to the Umbra, the shadow world of it, and there is actually like spirits in some spiring dark tower up endlessly into the sky. And you're like, oh shit. The worm is real, y'all, and it's here. And we're going to have to... This isn't going to just be an us thing. We're going to need more packs, and we're going to need more power, and we're going to need more fucking bodies and werewolves to throw at this thing in some heroic just last stand. Man, now I need to play a werewolf game. It's just super rad with all this stuff. That there are certainly ways that you could, like, glasswalkers are basically the werewolves who use cell phones. You could play more of a corporate raider kind of thing, or you're trying to actually do good. You've got a green company that's trying to do good. You could tell those kinds of stories. Every story I've ever told, you're a bunch of shirtless hippies living in a park, and every night you go out and wreck shop on late stage capitalism. and it's cool. It's really cool. Against Captain Planet villains and rad like D&D cast off like demon imps, that are literal sludge monsters and stuff. It's great. It's great. All right. Questions so far, Andy?
Okay. I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. So the Weaver trapped the worm.
Mm-hmm.
The worm has now broken free and is messing things up, right? It has become an agent of chaos, not balance.
I don't consider the worm to be free.
Okay.
The worm's still stuck in the pattern. The worm then, its personality split into three, and it has enough agents, mortal and spiritual, that act in the world. But the worm itself is still trapped in the pattern, in my opinion. If that's changed in a more recent edition, maybe even W20, I didn't read all of the... I started to skip some of the lore because I knew it to get to some more prescient things. But
I misinterpreted something earlier, so I might have just misinterpreted that, or it's a
To
nuance.
me, the worm is still trapped, but the worm is acting and active through agents. And so the Beast of War, the Eater of Souls, and Defiler are three like Hydra-like heads of this thing that have occasionally manifested. There is a tribe called the Croatan who are no longer with us because of Eater of Souls. Eater of Souls itself, like, broke through reality on Roanoke Island. Mm-hmm. For those of you familiar with that myth, you already kind of see where this is going. All of the Croatan threw themselves at this thing and used a super heavy ritual to rebind it, and it took all of their souls. Their tribal totem, the turtle, is forever asleep. It hasn't woken up since, and all the Croatan are gone. That's what it took to take care of one of those heads. Like, so those are like Vecna works for Eater of Souls. Like, if you want to talk about power scale, like these things are still like they're bigger than you. That's end game shit. That's the apocalypse in the title kind of shit when they start wiggling their way into the pattern.
So
you're going to deal with a lot of like skull pigs and like awesome name things like that. Sludge elementals. Fomori are humans who grow extra limbs and carapaces and can fight werewolves. They're people fighting werewolves and stuff. So, but the worm is everywhere. Like, because it's trapped in the pattern, though, not because it's free, but because it's trapped, it's literally everywhere, metaphysically.
So
did that help?
Yeah. Okay. So vampires are agents of the worm, according to werewolves.
According to werewolves, yes.
I don't know what's up with that.
Sure. Yes, you have asked the question that every 14-year-old first picking up Werewolf the Apocalypse and sifting through all this, wait, what? Has to get to is, but there's still vampires in this setting. And according to this, they're all of the worm. I've been playing Vampire for 3 years. I don't remember ever thinking of the worm once. What's the deal there? Yes, so vampires, as far as vampires are concerned, are fully sapient, modern predators in any sense of the word. They're either social predators, they're physical predators, they're predators, right? They're predators as a metaphor writ large. They're creeps. They're gross on a fundamental level. They need the stuff inside of people to live. And beside that, you have known them, if you've played any vampire games, as kind of the good guy of that story, because again, they can't convince themselves they're the good guy, but like their problem is the Sabbat. Their problem is other things. Very rarely do any of them actually subscribe to a religion of evil in any kind of meaningful way, right? Unless you're a Sabbat, in which case kind of, and then even then you're like, no, it's just the fucking religion of feeling myself, dude. Hashtag no filter. The fact that they are corrupted by the worm would be news to almost every vampire you've ever heard. I've ever met, anybody at a party, anybody in the card game, any vampire is pretty much not aware of what you're talking about, my dude. However, something is making these corpses move and act like people and prey on humanity and drink the stuff in people. What else is it but the worm? Right? Like, so it's kind of like every carpenters see every problem as a nail. There's a little bit of that to the werewolf ideology. It's just kind of like, well, they're clearly of the worm. Yeah, they're going to tell you, as you're tearing their head off, they're going to scream, I'm not part of the worm. I don't know what that means. Please put my head back on. Okay. Okay. Are we just going to believe that? No, I'm tearing the head off. So there's a little bit of that. Also, vampires are evil by any lens. Like, they only convince themselves they're just like people to themselves, like, and to each other. And that's a very comforting lie they tell each other. Like, it's really hard to be like, wait, don't kill me. All I do is eat the stuff inside of people. You've got me all wrong, man. It's like, I don't think I do. Like, even his defense sounded pretty shitty, right? We all agree that this dude sucks. Beyond that, like, if you're a Ventru, you're making money, literal blood money, from something awful, right? It's something that the werewolves might not even be here because you're a vampire. They're here for 7 other sins you've committed, and then they find out you're a vampire. Now it's bonus, because now it's going to be a good fight because you have fortitude, and that's going to be fun. So from the werewolf perspective, and they even at some point recommend, I don't know if they do it in W20, but back in the game when it was like, okay, we're tired of you asking, but how do vampires and werewolves get along? Questions. If you're playing werewolf, we recommend you play werewolf and play it from a werewolf perspective and concentrate on werewolf stuff. If you're playing vampire, we recommend you play vampire and concentrate on vampire perspectives and vampire stuff. To vampires, werewolves are lupines, and they are a burden that runs around the outside of cities, or sometimes you have to fight, right? Lupines incur in the city, and it's a problem. As werewolves, feel free to roll up, like, if you're like, well, I'm tired of these, of my, my players aren't being threatened by anything. I'm going to roll up a cool vampire boss because it feels like a Captain Planet villain. If it's a literal undead spirit, that would be cool. And if you really have the brain for it and like the One World of Darkness theory, then you do some of the heavy lifting for us. Like, we didn't make 2 origin stories that overlap. Like, there's no Cain in the werewolf story. There's no God in the werewolf story. It is suspiciously absent and quiet, and these 2 stories aren't cooperating. So what Cain, though, is a very big question early on in the werewolf cosmology of like, no. You just confirmed that Judeo-Christianity is right in your first game. That was your opening move. You said the God of the Israelites is real. And in this game, I can't help but notice no one says that. And in fact, they're talking about, well, there was the worm, the weaver, and the wild, and they created the earth. No. I'm guessing Yahweh probably did it because Cain's real and is cursed by an actual God man of the Bible fame. So, yeah, they don't play well together. If you really do some backflips, you can start to make things like God is himself in, what are they, the Celestines are the biggest spirits. It's Helios is personally cursed vampires, that he hates them, so they have to hide from his sight. So it's actually Helios, the sun spirit, not... You have to do some backflips. If you're telling a werewolf game, make it so that all of your vampires are absolutely like finger-steepling villains.
Fracking rules!
Fracking is the best! I don't even get anything from it. I'm losing money, if we're being honest. It's worth it. Yeah.
Although, side follow-up question. There are vampires who work for Pentex, right?
Yes.
I know that is perhaps deeper in lore than... But I remember there being a Giovanni who is high up in Pentex.
Yeah. Again, for the lore nerds out there, there are these Easter eggs throughout. And in fact, I was surprised when I was listening to this lore video, which now that I've mentioned it, I may as well... Lazar of Stygia, I think was the name of the channel, which was a very good video that I saw. I will check out more to let you know if there's more there. But if you like more World of Darkness, I found myself very well informed.
I forgot to mention this earlier when we were talking about that off stream, but I have watched some of his vampire videos, and they are very interesting.
Yeah. He does great comprehensive lore dives. It does kind of require you to know a little bit of what he's talking about, but it's pretty helpful. But I was surprised. Now, I remember this back in the day when I owned every book and pored over them for these kinds of cool Easter eggs. But, the Silent Strider tribe, which comes from northern Africa, naturally run across the Setites and work with the mummies and the children of Osiris to fight the Setites. So natural enemies of a particular vampire clan is a werewolf tribe of a specific name. These guys helped beat up Set back in the day. And there's a couple other, all the Silver Fangs and Shadow Lords of Northern Africa are instrumental in taking down Baba Yaga, famous ancient Nosferatu. There are lore dives that will get you there if you need to know how do these things abut against each other and how do they, historically, where have werewolves fit into some of these pictures and stuff. But kind of smartly, when Werewolf is telling werewolf story, they don't talk about, and then we ran into a bunch of fucking Malkavians again. They try and keep that out of it, except for where it's unavoidable for you deep lore nerds who are like, actually, that wouldn't be possible because there's Malkavians there. It's we know. And some of the writers of that book are not writers of this book, so we didn't allow for it. Shut up, nerd. You win a no prize. Is that what you want? And as one of those nerds... Yes, that's all I wanted, Rich. Just wanted a no prize. Could have just said, stop emailing me, and gave me a no prize. And the Week of Nightmare stuff compensated for everybody's apocalypse is going off at the same time. So there is lush crossover potential there. A lot of the heavy lifting of it to make some of the sense of to make sense of it's going to be on you a little bit because they just paint through the shadows. And honestly, if your game needs to know how Cain and the worm interact, your game is going on at a level that is beyond what your table probably needs. because your werewolf pack isn't fighting Kane or the worm directly.
Right, and your vampire doesn't know anything about the worm. Like you said,
right.
when their head is being ripped off by a werewolf, if that ever happens, they're like, wait, what?
What? But yes, there's a Giovanni who is on the board of directors for Pentex. Magda shows up in that comic who I looked it up, and the best guess is that it's like a Dark Ages character, I think, coming back, who belongs to a bloodline I wasn't familiar with. Like, I think I'd heard of them before, but they're like some ancient Irish vampire bloodline, because of course there is. So yeah, that's kind of what's up with that. It is, they would really rather you not ask inconvenient questions after a certain point.
Right.
But they've got a few good answers. And again, the idea is that the worm is in these vampires. They might not know it.
Right.
And if the vampire gets out enough, like, dude, that's not, I don't know what you're talking about. And you roll whatever werewolf insight you have, and you're just kind of like, this dude seems really sincere. It does not know that it's harboring an evil spirit. How do you not feel that, dude? It's all gross and inside of you. But that wouldn't be too weird to you, because you've probably fought other spirits that are living inside of things, like, that don't know it, maybe, or whatever. So yeah, you could use that as a great story seed, but they don't really have a finite canonical answer for you.
Okay. We have a little bit of time left, and I've realized we haven't even talked about some of the things that makes this character creation system different and versus vampire. It's stuff like the extra stuff you pick instead of just the person you create, breed and auspices.
Auspice, yep. The root of auspicious is the same thing as and auspex, actually, if we're talking about root words. Yeah. So yeah, I'll try and keep that brief. I will not succeed, but we won't do a 3-hour video on this, because now is a good time to start getting off the ride instead of starting the second half of it. All right. So remember back in video 1, I talked about how crazy I am about the World of Darkness character creation system, about how it just creates layers, and those layers fold in on each other. So you can create an infinite amount of characters with the same toolbox without even having to repeat yourself ever. Werewolf is very like that. While also being completely different and in such an interesting way, because I actually think they kind of got themselves back on the rails in future games in certain ways, but like Werewolf really breaks the mold immediately, which I think was smart of them, because they didn't handcuff them to one type of game to create that. I think there's something very smart that Bill Bridges in particular did with with being the name on the top of the call sheet for this game. Other people helped. I don't want to leave anybody's name off, but make it different right away. That way no one can say White Wolf makes this kind of game. We are now immediately making the complete opposite. It's this high adventure werewolf Nordic nightmare kind of game. Don't worry about it. But yes, so you have 3 tiers to character creation. 4, actually. First, you create a person, presumably. You can also create a wolf, or you can create a werewolf from birth, which has its own thing. We'll talk about that in a minute, hopefully. But basically, you create your person. You've got the base character sheet. It looks the same as the vampire one. It just doesn't say vampire at the top. It says werewolf. But it has all the same things: strength, dexterity, stamina, manipulation, charisma, appearance, etc. All the same stuff. Some skills are moved around a little bit. Don't worry about it.
Yep.
So you make a base-ass person, let's say. You're creating a human who turns into a werewolf. That's going to be your standard. It's you got your letter to Xavier's. An owl came and gave you your letter to Xavier's. And now you're a part of the academy, and you'll be part of Starfleet soon. So you create a base-ass person. I'm really into this, that, and the other thing, and I'm okay with this. So now you're a werewolf now, Harry. Hairy. And so first things first, you create your breed. Your breed is, were you human-born? That's a Hamid. Were you wolf-born? You're a lupus. You're actually a 2-year-old wolf that's just been running around doing wolf shit. Chasing deer and stuff like that. And eventually you started to grow hands and stuff, and your parents were like, well, it's time to talk to our cousins, the ones who do people stuff. Or you're this doesn't come naturally to me because I've always mispronounced it, a métis. Or what I always called a metis. A metis, a metis, a métis is the most proper, I think. Which is a werewolf of werewolf born. And we're going to talk about according to Werewolf Society, don't be one of them. It's kind of like inbred cousins kind of stuff. You are always sterile, so you breed true. 2 werewolves doing it is going to create a werewolf, and that werewolf is an evolutionary dead end, and so you need people and kinfolk and wolves and humans to keep making more werewolves. So one of the first rule of your set of werewolf laws is quit banging, and that is yet to work, as most religions will be able to tell you that's not a great first pillar. But so you're a human, you're a wolf, or you're a werewolf by birth, and everyone hates you, and you can't make more werewolves. So let's say you're a human. We made a human, right? So we made a human. You're a Hamid. So that affects some of the skills you're going to have, and like you can drive cars and stuff like that. If you're a lupus, born of a wolf, you probably can't drive cars coming out. So then there's the phase of the moon that you are. It can be the phase of the moon you're born under. It can be the phase of the moon you first changed under. It can just match your personality type. You can do fun contradictions with it or what have you. And these are phases of the moon. We probably should have said earlier, but if it's not obvious by now that Lon Chaney shit is out the window, you can change into a werewolf whenever you want. There's no full moons and stuff like that. You are arguably more powerful under your phase of the moon. Your stuff works a little better, but even that isn't really systemically reflected too much. You're a werewolf all the time. You are one of Gaia's protector warrior monsters all the time. Sorry. So you have a phase of the moon that best represents your role in Guru society. That is more of what it is than it is a testament to your personality, because you could be bad at it. But your role in Guru society is one of the following. There's the new moon, right? The blank. I was about to make a fist, but that might be a full moon. You've got the no moon is the ragabash. Here's where we're going to get into all the what do any of these words mean. Don't worry, Andy, I've memorized them. The ragabash is the new moon. You're the questioner. You're the trickster. You don't have a moon looking down on you, so you can kind of get away with pulling some shit like, why are we doing that? What you're doing, who told you to do that, and why? People suffer the ragabash more than they do other... If you're doing that as a full moon, everyone fucking hates you, dude. If you do it as the ragabash, you're like, well, everyone fucking hates you, but that's your job. There is the... what's the... Crescent. The crescent moon. And waxing or waning doesn't matter. You can make your own kind of added mythology to that. I'm sure there's some stats somewhere in a book. I think there is a book of the auspices somewhere that might make more of a deal out of if it's waxing or waning. But you're a crescent moon one way or the other. You're a spiritualist. You know, you work in the dark a little bit because there's only some of the moon showing, and you deal with spirits. It's your job to deal with spirits. You are the avatar from Avatar The Last Airbender. You're the bridge. So if any spirits are going to come to your sept, everyone's going to look to you and be like, Gary, I don't know, the trees are here. It's probably for you. So you have to go out and figure out, sorry, noble trees, what did you need? I have some training in this. But you're also, like, you're the spooky mystic and stuff like that. You're the one who's always going to be spending more of your time in the Umbra than everybody else. Next is the half moon, is the Philodox. You are the judge, the arbiter. You're the balancer, right? You're halfway between everything, and it's your job to be like, okay, you're full of shit, and you're full of shit. We're going to try and figure out which one of you is right. Quit growling at each other. If one of you goes into Krynos form, I swear to God, it's going to get ugly in here, right? And it might surprise you that a bunch of testosterone and estrogen up rage monsters have a lot to fight about. And so Philodoxes are kind of like the baddest asses, even though there's like a warrior cast coming up that you might have guessed which one it is. But like these guys have to stand between warriors who are going all snarling, more murder form at each other and be like, stop it, stop it, stop it, both of you. I will put you in fucking timeout. With gifts bestowed to me by the moon and the earth itself, if I have to. Then there's the gibbous moon, the pregnant moon, the most of the way there moon, and they are the Galliards. And they are the poets, the bards, you already said. But they're like rad battle poets with like electric shredding guitars and stuff.
They're axes, a literal axe and a guitar.
Literal axes that they've wired up for some tasty licks in the middle here. But yeah, they're the oral traditionalists. They are the ones who are telling the stories. They're the one who's going to tell your story. You know, when you get back, like, after, like, holy shit, we barely made it out of there. Like, they're the ones who are just kind of like, oh my god, we barely made it out of there. Did you see when fucking Two Thorns over there was just like... That was fucking rad, dude. This is going to be great. Let's get back to the campfire and tell everybody else, right? Like, that's their job. But also, it's their job to remember all the memories of everybody else before you. So, when your new ass werewolf shows up and someone is just kind of like, well, it's time to introduce you to your people. Gary the Galliard is going to come down and tell you that story of the Worm, the Weaver, and the Wild that Marty opened with. You know, that's Galliard shit. It's your job to remember. Then there's the Ahrun, which are the warriors. They're the warrior caste. They're the full moons. Congratulations. Give yourself a prize. That's why the full moon's kind of the biggest deal. They're also kind of like, they're not helpful. Not everything is a battle that needs to be won. So you need the Ragabash, the Theurge, the Philodox, and the Galliard to do a lot of things. But when you need an Ahrun, there's nobody better than a fucking Ahrun. Look at this guy. He's coming in here. He can't wait. Don't make us let him off the leash, because your whole shit's about to tumble down, Captain Planet villain. So you've got Hamid. You're born a human or a wolf. And then you're one of these things. After that, there's 13 tribes that you are usually genetically born into. I actually was noticing a lot in W20. I don't know if you got this far, but like, there's a lot of like, and they adopt people from other tribes, and they adopt people from other tribes.
It seemed like the lore had, if that was true and old, it seemed like the lore had shifted slightly to certain tribes you can kind of petition, but it is difficult if you weren't born into them. And other tribes will straight up tell you, no, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. Like, the Black Furies are all female, unless you're a Métis. In which case, there's some problematic lore behind that. But problematic in-world, at least this time. It's not... So, they reject all their boys. Now, I noticed in W20, they're kind of like, so they send them to other tribes. I forget if this just wasn't true in other editions, or if it historically wasn't true that they didn't give them to other tribes. Let's just say several Amazonian traditions prevail until fairly recently. So, yeah, they would kill them. They would still abort them. They would abort them. They would do whatever. But yes, so the Black Furies have no male members that aren't Métis. I'm going to start calling them Metis because it doesn't sound right to me. But for everyone who thinks that sounds ridiculous, they're all nonsense words to me. So, but I'm not going to hesitate every time I say it if I just start calling them Metis again. So they have some boys just naturally around, and they have boys that are kinfolk to them, right? Like, they have to have boys around, and until Gaia, in her infinite wisdom, thinks of a better way, they still need boys to make more Black Furies. Right. So boys, unfortunately, continue to serve a purpose. No one's there more than the Black Furies, wishing that wasn't true. So yeah, things like that. So they give up their boy children, and other tribes are kind of like, oh, we'll gladly take it.
Yeah, a werewolf, we'll take it.
Yeah, that's great. Especially, not all the tribes are doing so well anymore these days, so they could use the numbers.
But and especially when the apocalypse is coming / happening, it's already started. We need all the soldiers we can get. Like, there's a line in the book that says, everyone who will, be in the final conflict is already born. So like, and we're running out of werewolves.
Mm-hmm. There's a reason the first sin is don't bang each other. It's because that's only good for right now. You might make one true werewolf, but yeah, as you say, everyone who's going to fight in the last battle is alive right now, probably. But beyond that, it's a dead end. We need to make more werewolves.
But then, conversely, the book also mentions that there are more Matisse Metis. I also read it as Metis. Now than like at any time other, because fuck, makes a werewolf, guaranteed werewolf.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the fucking end of times, and you're in this trench, and it's sweaty and hot, and you just escaped that worm spirit. You're gonna fuck. I mean, like, it's not... Look, men and women can work together, and we need more comedies and dramas and just general, like, sci-fi and stuff that tells you men and women can just be friends. There doesn't always need to be this kind of tension. At the same time, in this kind of game, which is just, like, you're a human person, but we ripped the top off of you, and all the passion is laid bare. You actually have to roll to resist all your passions all the time. You guys are going to fuck all the time. But yeah, your responsibility, old-timey style, is to make more of you. So your job is both to fuck, but not each other, except we know you're going to do that. All right, so you've got a breed, you've got an auspice. I'm going to try and do the lightning round here of the 13 tribes. By the way, there used to be 16, but thanks to colonialism, the fact that one of your main ruling traits is rage, and hubristic paternalism exists alive and well in werewolf society. 3 of those tribes are no longer with us these days, for various reasons. Usually because European werewolves couldn't understand why you weren't so rad like they were, and then they killed all of you. Rarely were they manipulated to do so. They were just white people. You've seen white people, if not.
I'm familiar with the concept.
Yeah. You'll see. They're everywhere. Yeah, you'll see them.
I have a degree in history. I know all about the shit they do.
Right. Yeah. I've been told like 1 in 10 people is white or something. So you're bound to know somebody. All right. So the 13 modern tribes, Black Furies. They're the ones I was just talking about. They're all women. They're Greek in their kind of geographical origin, but that doesn't have that much to do with it. They're all women. They're all women empowerment. They're lefty as hell. Again, sometimes you've got kind of like riot girl with no vowels, shaved head bitch queens. But also, like, yeah, there's plenty of them that are just kind of like, no, I just don't listen to any man. Men are still cool. Men are decent, whatever. Like, so, but women with a Y probably, because of course, if you remember back to the beginning of this video, women with a Y because of course, writ large. If you're like, that sounds like Marty's favorite, you'd be right. Bone Gnars are often represented as like the homeless population. They are urban werewolves at the bottom. They live on the streets. They talk to trash spirits. Their tribal totem is the rat. They go places that other werewolves don't, and most werewolves look down on them, kind of like the Nosferatu a bit of werewolves.
I definitely got Nosferatu vibes from them.
Yeah. A lot of werewolves look down on them, but guess what? We're eating. We're living. While you're panicking at what are you going to do about this, we're already there. Like, we're in the Weavers. We're deep in the Weavers' territory, and we're figuring it out. And thriving in a lot of ways. So, yes, they're the lower rung of the urban werewolf. The Children of Gaia are my second favorite, if you had to know. They are peaceniks. They want everyone to get along, and by that, they're not likely to call off and kill a bunch of humans, and they wish that you would stop doing that. Humans aren't the problem, right? The way that we were saying earlier, the worm's the symptom, it's the weaver that's the problem. To them, the humans are the victims here too. It's the worm you're angry at. So let's go into the Umbra and attack the thing that's controlling the humans, not the human who's being controlled. You dum-dum. Also, at the center of any, and then all these werewolf tribes went to war, inevitably the end of that story is, and then the Children of Gaia came, put their hands on their hips, and were just kind of like, fucking really? We can't turn our back on you guys for fucking 2 minutes. And they're always going to end up being the arbiters of peace. A Child of Gaia Philodox is a very classic archetype of a cool character to play.
Sorry, I have the Children of Gaia art on the screen for the viewers right now, and I just love it's a wolf with necklaces.
Yeah, it's a hippie wolf.
Yeah, but something I was kind of surprised at when reading through the book is that every clan or every tribe has like a totem animal, and none of them are wolves. And
that's right.
I was just saying, wait, why are they talking about unicorns or Uncle Thunder? Or I can't remember what one of them is. And I'm sure I'm.
Nope, you got it, bud. Uncle Thunder.
It's like a unicorn.
And you
or
said you
rat.
just read this earlier today? No way. Dropping deep lore like Uncle Thunder.
It just sticks with you.
Even
all
the
of their...
all-wolf tribe is Griffin. It's not wolf.
I mean, look, I get it. Like, I get you're going. It was just very funny to me when I was reading through it. It's like, and their spirit totem is so and so, and I was like, really? We're gonna go
Pegasus
with
and unicorn,
not a wolf? They're not even all predators. Like,
well, no. And I actually was surprised that I wouldn't like as much as I could have struggled to name all the tribes. Probably if you gave me 20 minutes and a piece of paper. I could not have named all their totems to you.
Oh,
because your totem isn't going to be your tribe's totem. Your totem is going to be your pack totem. And beyond that, you're going to be under your sept's totem. Well beyond that is whatever your tribe's totem is.
Right.
To you, the player, and you, the character's daily life, your tribe totem is something that like gets brought up at like religious functions and dinner, right? Like it's just kind of like, don't forget, thank Pegasus for your kills tonight. It's like, dude, Mom, I'm not a Pegasusian. I told you that. But you have a minor spirit that selected your tribe to be cool with, and so that's going to be the one you're like super chill with. You know, it's going to be like, thanks, Thunder Fox, you're the best. Whatever.
okay,
So
sorry, you were on a good roll.
No, that's fine, and please stop me because I'm trying to go through the lightning round just so I've said it all, and then we can dick around a little bit more at the end here to talk about more stuff. So the Fianna are Irish. They're Celtic. They're everybody's favorite white people. The amount we fetishize the Irish continues to boggle my mind sometimes, but they are the Fianna. That's what they are. In this upcoming video game, it's a Fianna because of course it is. Literally, as soon as I read that, I was just like, of fucking course he is. Why wouldn't he be? Everyone's favorite mythologized white people, the Fianna. So yes, you're historically Irish. Your Galliards are your leading face because it's the warrior poets. You run through the thicket without losing your braids and stuff like that. They're cool. If you already love Irish stuff, they're cool. They're your favorite right away. There's not even a second place. Don't worry about it. The Get of Fenris are your Viking Nordic murder lords. If you need 10 dudes to be down for a fight at any time, it's the Get of Fenris. Of a race of warriors that break themselves up into 13 tribes, the Get of Fenris are the warriorist. I did notice in W20, correctly by the way, Paradox, they have stripped out some of the obvious kind of ethno-statey aspects of the Get of Fenris. It's not saying the Get of Fenris are that way, but if there's some werewolves that are going to be that way, they're going to be Get of Fenris.
Sure.
And I don't think that's inappropriate, but yes, I can tell why you wouldn't want to put that in their main description. You wouldn't want to put that in their main description. Just to nobody. Just to the open air. But they do mention that if someone's going to be racist or sexist, it's probably the Get of Fenris, but that not everyone needs to be racist or sexist to be a Get of Fenris. But yeah, they're your Ahruns are absolutely your leading face for the Get of Fenris. They are murder hobos most foul. Sorry, that's the Bone Gnawers. All right, so Get of Fenris. It means children of Fenris, the giant moon-eating wolf of Viking mythology, if you needed to know where they're at. And also, Fenris, not their spirit. as you pointed out. I actually do forget it off the top of my head, because I'm telling you, I would not be able to tell you these off the top of my head. And I just read it.
It does say tribal totem is Fenris the Great Wolf.
Oh, okay. There you go. There's one with a wolf, and it's not the wolf.
Okay. Ones. But then it also has other ones, like Hroffen, the apathetic cleric from Star Chasers.
Wow. Yeah. Good for her, man.
Yeah.
I'm proud of her.
Really getting out there.
Then there's the Glasswalkers. these are, and I forget, historically they had another name, and I actually don't even like it that much, but like they're the Keepers of Men or something like that.
Yeah, I think the book said they've had like 4 different names or something throughout time.
Because glass wasn't super easy to make until relatively recently, but that's part of their clan ethos. Their tribal totem's the cockroach. I knew that one because they're survivors. They get along and they go with the flow. They're the Toreador in the way that they're on TikTok. The Glasswalkers are on TikTok right now. Like, don't worry about them. But they don't see the Weaver as the villain. And that's the way the world is working. You can work with it. Like, yes, the Weaver in excess, and yes, the way that cities are sprawling and gross, like, that's a problem. But that's man's natural state, is to gather in these groups and build. Building up is better than building out. Like, you should learn to embrace the city and the new spirits. Can any of you talk to glass spirits? Have any of you met a phone spirit? Like, other than like what, the ghost of a railroad spirit? Have any of you talked to a spirit that has been spawned into existence since 18-4? No? Okay, then fuck off, because I can take the lead here. I know how to hack a computer and set the timer on your VCR. Also, you need to get rid of this VCR. No one uses these anymore. So yes, Glasswalkers are, if you want it to be your cyberpunk werewolves, with cool names like Netwalker or whatever. There you go. This is the tribe for you. You're allowed to own 1 stunk. On the very opposite end are the Red Talons. The Red Talons reject. You're a wolf or nothing. They only fuck with wolves. They only fuck wolves, literally. They only mate with wolves. They don't want to hear anything else. They've been telling you man was the problem since literally before there were numbers on the year. Like, they've been trying to tell everyone, quit it with these people shits. Underneath the Get of Fenris, they're the only other ones that are nearly as warlike and as ready to go to fucking town. Not because wolves are inherently bad or mean, because this tribe is inherently racist against things that don't have 4 legs. Like, they're a problem. And hard to play, I would say. But so yeah, I'd say often they're NPCs or antagonistic forces that show up at moots and are just kind of like, and I say eat all the humans. And everyone's like, this again, we're not eating all the humans.
Stop coming here and saying that.
If that's all you have, I have emotion. Is it eat all the humans? Not necessarily.
It can wait till next week.
I mean cycles. You meant week. You said week. We all heard you. So yeah, Red Talons. They're mean wolves, and kind of racist. Also, their tribe's not doing so great because there's not an abundance of wolves anymore, and they refuse to learn. So they're not extinct, but they're part of their tribe lore is not doing so great. Shadow Lords come first alphabetically, but are the betas. They're the beta cucks. Poor Shadow Lords. Yeah, they're always the second in line. Every time I think of the Shadow Lords, I imagine Jenner from Rats of Nim. He's the bad guy who Jonathan has to fight, or not? No, Jonathan's the good mouse. Who's the good rat? Anyway, but yeah. He's the scheming one who ends up crushing Nicodemus as soon as he gets a chance, right? He's the schemer who's in the Shadow Lords. They're not always evil. They're kind of the Tremere, though. Like, there's the Venture on the top, and the Tremere are here, too. And, like, they keep mugging to be in the picture, and it's like, would you stop it? This is my picture. They are kind of classically betas, not in the modern cuckology term. That was a joke. But, like, but yeah, they would be the leaders, if not for this tribe I'm about to mention in a minute. But they're also they're excellent wartime consiglieres. They're definitely like they know how to get their hands a little dirty, so you don't have to, if that's what this is going to take. They're geographically tied to Eastern Europe. They're all dark-haired and swarthy and have some very draconic ways of thinking about the world.
I thought the art had several tails, but it's a cape that's just the same color as his fur.
It's the kind of werewolf that wears a cape.
Yeah.
I could have stopped there. I'm sorry. Yeah, no. The Silent Striders are kind of North African. They tend to be lean, long, kind of sandy colored wolves, like literally because that's the kind of wolf you'd find in a kind of North Africa. But they're the messengers, like they're the marathon runners, like that would like take this from here to Kenya and back, like kind of thing. Like that's kind of among their traditions. They're the messengers is a lot of what they kind of get typed as. They're lean, they're swift, they're pretty good about getting in and out of things. They're cool. I like a Silent Strider. I haven't played a ton. Anecdotally, by the way, there are were-coyotes. There's other were-animals that I intentionally stop myself from mentioning too much, but were-coyotes tend to get away with pretending they're Silent Striders because they look a lot similar. Like, yeah, no, I'm one of them. I'm one of you guys. Don't worry about it. They famously clash with vampire clans in history. They do, like, those tree huggers from back there, Children of Gaia, they will kick your ass, by the way, so don't push them too far, but they just tend to be peaceniks. These messengers will tear you in half if you happen to be the wrong kind of undead or are in their way. They've got a cool history and are a neat clan or a tribe. I keep doing it too, but yeah, they are also like basically like this tribe is responsible for most of Africa. We didn't come up with a second African. Now, granted, sub-Saharan Africa, you don't get a ton of wolves as your primary movers and shakers in the predatory world, so I don't think it's so much an omission of like, nope, Africa gets one kind of wolf.
When I was looking at the Wikipedia article for this earlier, it did seem like a lot of the other were creatures kind of dominated Africa. It was like were jaguars and other predator cats and stuff like that.
Yeah, the Bastet. In general, rule a lot of sub-Saharan Africa. So there is an in-world reason for it too, but that's one they had to come up with a little bit later. I don't think the Silent Strider started off problematic though. So and as people revisited them, they grew more robust. The Stargazers.
Oh wait, no,
still have a little bit of trouble with the Stargazers.
Sorry, you skipped the Silver Fangs.
I did skip the Silver Fangs. Because white people. The ones that the Shadow Lords wish they were is the Silver Fangs. And Silver Fangs should already kind of give you an idea of where we're headed with this. But they're mostly like Russian nobility. They're the whitest of the white people of the werewolf world.
This wolf has a mullet. So, I mean...
Yes. But yeah, they're all... old Russian monarchy, but they're also landed English money. Like they literally in their description, it talks about like all the monarchies of men that they are closest tied to. They're the coolest wolves and stuff. You know, they're the big white wolf and whatever. Like, okay, you're the name of the company. We get it. Must be nice. Nepotism. But yeah, like they're the natural leaders. And you could play a not uncool version of that relatively easily. You could be naturally heroic. They try and make one of their signature characters, I think is Lord Albrecht, I think his name is. He shows up at the end of that comic. Mm-hmm. He's supposed to be kind of cool. But yeah, it's hard not to kind of be like, meh. Any one of these is more interesting to me than the Silver Fangs because they're just probably blonde hair, blue-eyed, and naturally good at shit, and that's only so interesting. Apologies to all my blonde-haired, blue-eyed people. Stargazers might be problematic. It's tough. They're the Asian ones. They have a martial art. Yeah, I can't make it better than that. Apparently, in very modern lore, they leave the the Western. I forget the name of it. It's the cooperation of werewolves. They don't have like a one governing body. They're all werewolves.
It's like the Western Concordiant or something like that.
Yeah, the Western Concordiant. That's it. So they've recently left and have found themselves, like, now they call themselves, like, the way that there's other were creatures. They don't consider themselves werewolves anymore, sort of. It was a little confusing because I haven't read that, so I'm just reporting what I read. But it makes sense because the Stargazers are also like, and the Stargazers are here too. And sometimes they know a martial art. And they're kind of all the Asian ones. Which, again, if all of them were geographical, that wouldn't be such a hard sell because you'd be like, well, this type of wolf.
Right.
Is the genetic stock that Stargazers tend to come from. I don't know that it reads that way. And again, I don't... Look, if you read the Stargazer Tribe book, I'm sure they're filled out and compensated for as best a couple of white kids probably could have. I definitely think they're neat. I do think they're ones that, other than getting into all the nativism I'm about to get into, because they happen to alphabetically come in a row. I just, yeah, something about it just doesn't sit right, and I don't know that it ever did, but like it certainly sits even less right now, and as we sit here in 2021. Again, I'm not trying to hate on the Stargazers. I think they're perfectly cool. They have a lot of unique things to them that are pretty cool, and they're the contemplative ones. They're the wolves that look up at night and are kind of like, huh, you ever really think about it, man? So make a stoner Stargazer, and you've already made it less problematic. What if those are just all atoms in a bar of soap that a giant's using? Man, blew my own mind. Am I right? I'm a ragabash, by the way. I'm allowed to get away with this. All right, so then there's the two North American First Nation tribes that are left. I already talked about the Croatan. They are all gone. And their two surviving brothers forever mourn them and are still pretty mad at all the European colonizing werewolves that came across that started that problem, in their opinion. So they're the Uktana and the Wendigo. If you say Uktana or whatever, I've found that it's more accurate through my own research, and now I just kind of prefer the pronunciation of Uktana. I'm a white kid from Philadelphia. I don't know any better. So that even might be wrong. But Uktana and Wendigo. Which, as I was telling Andy a little bit before the stream, they are both the First Nation. They are both Native American, tied to Native American tribalism in general, not one tribe in particular. But they are kind of the spooky ones and the angry ones, and that's probably not great. But to be fair, like when they made the Wendigo the angry ones, it was supposed to be they're angry about white people shit, doing like white people things. Like there is a young, angry demographic of reservations and things that, yeah, are kind of like, it was meant to be a good representation, and I don't think it's, once you start trying to tell another person, you start to be like, not all of this sounds great. Yeah, no, I can hear it. I hear it, but this is what I've got to work with, so this is what I'm going to go through. I love the Uktana, by the way. I think they're super rad. The idea of, I said they were the spooky ones. They tend to fuck with spirits that other people don't, like including like corruption spirits. It's like, that's of the worm, back away from it, and it's like, it's still a spirit, and that's my job. So you guys back up, and I will deal with the worm spirit, asking it why it's here, what it wants. Oh, and it turns out, there's some barrel of oil in the glade that's creating these. Let's go remove the barrel of oil. See, it didn't hurt to talk to the worm spirit, right? They're gonna kind of dare the dawn when it comes to getting, according to the other tribes, oh, they're falling to the worm next, right? We all see that. Like, but according to them, they're just kind of like, yeah, it's still a spirit, and it still deserves some amount of parlay here, because it might give you answers, and if not, we'll kill it. Yeah, we'll kill them. Like, it's fine. I think the Uktana are pretty rad. It took me forever as a young punk to kind of get around to like, oh, I see why they're cool. But I do. I think they're super cool. And the Wendigo are the warrior ones. They're the angry young men of the Native American werewolf tribes. And again, rightly so. No one's questioning why they're angry. And to be fair, no one spends this much time trying to double over to explain why the Geta Fenris are great warriors and angry, right? So, like, it just puts you in an uncomfortable middle a little bit as to, like, where should you fall on it. But they're great warriors and super cool. And the Wendigo spirit is a cannibalistic wind spirit that is actually around in Native mythology, and it's kind of rad. There are several horror movies about them. You can look them up. And the Uktana is apparently itself a spirit. I had never heard of it. It's not a mythological trope that I'd heard of, but it's apparently a horned river spirit that's super cool. So, yeah, maybe. So that is your 13 werewolf tribes. If you're like, oh, just like my favorite show or movie about werewolves, you're lying. And we can hear you. At the same time, it does give you a lot of broad areas to fall into. You're going to be some kind of goddess-worshipping eco-warrior. Regardless, that box is ticked off almost for you. You can try and be peaceful. You can be a negotiator. You can be a glasswalker who's trying to convert these things or switch things to green energy. Harnessing wind spirits to do stuff. Like, you can do a bunch of stuff in there, but that is kind of coming with the package. Real quick, because it's not going to fit anywhere else very well. There were 3 other tribes. The Croatan I've already told you about. They were also Native American tribes, and they sacrificed themselves to stop a head of the worm. It took an entire tribe to stop Eater of Souls, who the Uktana and Wendigo kind of blame the Europeans for bringing. Like, it's not necessarily explicit that that's why, but that's who they blame. There wasn't an Eater of Souls there, and now there is one. You know who else is here all of a sudden? White people. just causation's not, but, right? You guys were here to see it, and we're like, wow, what's that? That looks bad. And we were like, yeah, that does look bad. John. I'm guessing, but I'm probably right. Is your name John?
Yeah.
Okay. So the Croatan, their tribe, we didn't go through all the tribal totems because, again, I find that to be less important to your game a lot of the time. But was the turtle. The turtle's asleep. It's been asleep ever since. The bunyip originally started, this has been fleshed out a lot more. But originally the idea was the Australian wolf, which is actually a marsupial breed of wolf, is extinct. And was made extinct because Europeans went there and did a bunch of shitty European stuff. Again, stop me if you've heard this one. White people. Again, you probably know one. Try not to hold it against them. But white people happened. And the Australian wolf, or the Tasmanian wolf,
It's the Tasmanian wolf, yeah.
It is the Tasmanian wolf. Yeah. But it's actually a marsupial breed. It's not a straight-up lupus because everything on Australia is weird. And it was probably poisonous, if we're being honest.
And probably laid eggs or something.
Probably laid eggs. It's an egg-laying, pouched, poisonous wolf that actually, I'm going to say we're better off without. I'm on white people's side again. No, but yes, there was a breed of wolf-like creature there that is now extinct, and when they were first coming up with werewolf or the various tribes, they were like, we think it would be interesting if one of the lost tribes was this species of extinct wolves, that the worm, through Black Spiral Dancers, which we haven't mentioned yet, but I'm about to get to, basically kind of helped twist the white folk into being like, well, you guys aren't with us, so you must be against us. And meanwhile, they're like, man, we left on purpose. You guys suck, and we did that on purpose. And then Boy Rage takes over, and now there's no more bunyip. So that is one of the lost tribes, is the bunyip. Australian wolves, which are actually, again, Tasmanian wolves, which are actually literally extinct. So that was kind of a cool for your given value of cool. It was cool the way that we villainized Europeans again. Again, they're asking for it. They're fine. White people are going to be fine. Lastly, there are the white howlers. The whitest of the white people. Actually, they're Picts, I think, is traditionally, which is, if you don't know Picts, they are, like, the Celts are the cool ones that everyone wants to be when you're in high school and stuff. They're the Irish ones. Then there were the crazy ones who drew all, like, the weird paintings on themselves and screamed and ran naked at enemy armies. Those are the Picts. But they are also kind of up on the big islands, the big foggy islands. And you might notice there's not so many Picts around anymore. So again, we've kind of focused in on a group of people that doesn't exist anymore. In this case, people that don't exist anymore, and tried to explain why through fun game terms. Well, the White Howlers used to be kind of average cool. Like, again, if they would have been everyone's favorite other than the Fiona, but they're gone. So the Fiona, I keep calling the Fiona, the Fianna. But they used to dare the worm to come and get them. Like, that was kind of like part of their, like, ritual was they did this thing called Dancing the Spiral, which they would dare really close to the worm in almost an Uktana way, like in the way that the Uktana are kind of like, man, it looks pretty dope. And this is part of why people don't trust the Uktana. I was like, yeah, did you not learn? Marty hasn't finished the story, but it's not going to go a good place. He said they're gone. So this was part of their kind of like, just kind of real macho shit of just kind of like, yeah, I'm going to go right up to the worm. I'm going to punch it in the neck. And I'm going to run away. And whatever chases me, we're going to jump on and kill. And now I'm a man or something like that. Right.
Are you sure they weren't from Philadelphia?
Yes. I'm going to hook a battery at it.
I'll punch a police horse in the face and we'll just deal with it.
So eventually that doesn't go well for them is basically the long story short of that. Because, yeah, eventually the worm starts catching some of them and twisting them up, and then they start bringing others back in kind of a Pennywise the Clown fashion of just kind of like, no, we all float down here. No, it's cool. Actually, you don't have to run away from the labyrinth. Come in here, you huck a battery, and then you walk closer to the worm. It's not expecting that. The closer you are to danger, the further you are from harm. Eh? It's like, well, that does sound like words. And basically the entire tribe is lost to corruption. The worm gets them all, and they start killing anybody who refuses to convert, and etc. Like, they actually drag the last white howlers, kicking and screaming, into the labyrinth, which again is the worm, represented by a giant spiral, by the way. So they're all drug into the labyrinth, where now, when Black Spiral Dancers, which are now a tribe, they're the worm's tribe. They're the worm's warriors. They are his werewolves. They're twisted and corrupt. They have patches missing and crazy eyes, and they're the guy at the end of the bar who's looking two different ways and don't match either of them because one of them is going to get you in a fight. They're crazy worm-tainted werewolves, but they are a tribe of werewolf, and they still have like weird honor and glory and stuff. So you could try and talk to them. I don't recommend it. However, one of the coolest things I find about them is that their name, because they still dance the spiral, but now they go through it. They walk into this thing. It's this, and it gives you it Dagobah caves you into insanity, more or less. It haunts you with all kinds of twisted visions. The worm shows up to talk to you and kind of be like, man, we're gonna fuck shit up, like your whole spiritual side of you, because there's still somewhere there's a white howler spirit that's trying to speak and trying to find its ground again, and they bleed it out of you in this labyrinth of pecked to death by millions of cuts and the death of a million cuts and stuff like that. Once you stumble out the other side of the labyrinth, and you're a man now, Harry, Harry, once you stumble out the other side, the first noise you make is your name. That's your deed name. So there's a lot of Black Spiral Dancers named please no, like there tons of them. There's just hundreds of Black Spiral Dancers with just truly terrible names as they just cry out in anguish. There's several that are just sobbing noises and things like that because you have just been stripped bare of anything left resembling humanity, which also makes for some fun opportunities to have funny names. There is the Black Spiral Dancer who is on the Pentex board is named Francesco. And I'm not saying that they might have even just said he just goes by Francesco. That's not what that's right. Not his spiral name necessarily. But I like to think, no, that was his he came out and was Francesco. Like, what did he see? What's in there? What did Francesco see while he was in there? Because it's Francesco now. We all heard him. And yeah, we were talking in back chat yesterday, Spaghettis. On one of Black Spiral Dancer named Spaghettis. So that is now the 16 tribes, and 2 of them are lost forever, and 1 of them is lost forever in the other way, and so much as you're going to end up fighting a bunch of them. So you can fight evil werewolves, evil corporations, smog spirits, sludge spirits, giant earth movers that come alive with red lights as eyes, and giant spider monster creatures. You can go to other realms and fight razors with legs. It's just, man, what can't you do in this game? Really, really a coherent vision and narrative.
Yeah. I wasn't at all confused throughout any of that.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. A to B to C, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Werewolf.
The Apocalypse.
It's rad as hell. It is a fun now that I sold myself halfway through, you can see where I switched the switch is it's a great beer and chips game for a bunch of lefties looking to lefty. Like, just get together and SJW the shit out of a smog spirit.
Awesome. Is there anything you'd like to say kind of in wrap up? And if you feel like you'd like to go on further, we can always return to Werewolf the Apocalypse.
Yeah, now that we've gotten the paint on the canvas, I think we can actually come back to it with a little more focus. The getting the paint on the canvas was the thing I was like, oh God, where do you start? And as you kept texting me, I'm just like, nonsense. Utter nonsense.
Well,
I'm already lost. I'm on page 4.
Especially when I read the comic and I was like, I believe my exact question was, am I supposed to understand what is happening?
Yeah, just because, again, it won't go anywhere else naturally. So in second edition, they introduced this idea of telling a comic, and it was really cool. It was Dear Talese, again, for all my comics heads out there, for all my artist heads out there. Dear Talese is pretty rad. And it was a very good origin story of here's a young werewolf who wakes up as a werewolf. Some Black Spiral dancers find him first. He has to run away from them. There's some evil spirits that he stumbles across. And then another grown-up werewolf finds him and helps him navigate and tells him how to step sideways into the Umbra. And, like, it's a real good on board of here's what your first werewolf session is going to look like. Werewolf 20 is very much this one's for my nerds out there story of, like, it immediately starts throwing nonsense words and concepts at you. It's told from the point of view of a lupus, which isn't terribly helpful for a new reader. And again, remember, that is a werewolf born of wolves. There's a bunch of prophecy and crap, which is updating. It's trying to update the landscape. The problem is, if this is your first werewolf product and the first page you turn to is Run Spirit and some bird spirit that's not the bird you think it is for half the comic, and there's a wolf that's only talking to it, and you get there and, like, yeah, and moon bridges are just thrown in there, like, that's fine. Like, yeah, like, it's not a good introduction. It is a good Easter egg laden teaser for fans.
Yeah.
It is not an onboarding, and I think it's a failure in that way. And
well, I agree, but having read the first, not even fifth of the book because it's massive, I do understand it more now in retrospect. But yeah, and this is not just true of Werewolf 20th. This is true of all of the 20th anniversary games. They are meant, they are marketed as nostalgia, and I don't think that was the only. You could have also been like, hey, that game you've definitely heard of because it's a foundational 90s role-playing game. Yeah. This is the best version of it. This is the best version we made. Not, you remember this game, you were here, you put on a leather jacket in 1994 and you said, I'm a Bruja. Okay, great. Yes, certainly this game is also for them. This game is also for me, kid who didn't play role-playing games until he was in his 20s, and this game was dead at that point, basically.
No, and again, I think the book itself does an okay job at getting you there relatively quickly, but that opening comic, it's telling you you're not invited almost by turning the first page, I think. Like, in a way that it certainly was not intended. I guarantee you they weren't thinking of it that way. They were thinking, this is for fans by fans. Right. And yeah, this is your nostalgia trip. They weren't thinking, well, what if this is someone's first comic, right? Yeah. Like, this isn't like... And don't forget to check out X Factor number 4 for the rest of this story. Like, it's not doing that. Which I think even that would have been helpful if they kind of made it like issue 26. Like, if they nameplated the front page as just kind of like, even with some editor's notes or something, like, back in issue 6 of this made-up comic we just pretended to exist. I don't know, something. It's easy for me to sit back now, but, like, I barely understood it, and I understood it.
Right.
When you were like, am I supposed to understand this? I was like, oh, yep. Nope, I can see exactly what your problem is. It's nonsense is your problem. Yeah, you're supposed to be, it's Maria Cabra, and it's not Auntie Aubrey, it's Mama Larissa or whatever her name is.
And Evan, everyone's favorite werewolf, Evan.
Evan was a signature character.
I'm sure he's rad as hell.
No, yeah, Evan's fine. He was the POV character of second edition. So now you're supposed to be really proud of Evan that he's come this far. Not if you have no idea who Evan is. It's... I think a mistake was made, and that is the only other criticism I will have of Werewolf tonight. Hopefully you could see on my face as it went on. It's rad. It's tough to get your toe into necessarily. It's tough to start to explain, and I think some of it doesn't age well. And I'd be interested to see what a modern approach would look like, if it would look different, if you could make it look different. I definitely think they've sanded a lot of the edges off of it. In a good way. I do think there's some things that are baked into it that you can't run away from. So is there a good way to lean into it while also explaining yourself better. You know, like the Wendigo and the Uktana, you know, could be better represented, even by getting, you know, First Nation writer, you know, or something who could put you're again. We were talking about it a little bit before stream. It's not that you're wrong. It's that the way you're putting it sucks a little bit. Like, we can move this a little bit more here, and now I feel better represented. You know, like that. Like, I think there's definitely ways to rescue it because it's cool. And again, it's animism and it's oral traditions and stuff like that. That's the world over. That's not exclusive to these things. It just tends to come off as if it's a couple of cool white dudes in the 90s who made up a somewhat Native American fetishizing or Orientalism. Yeah, like it has just a little bit of that. Well, it probably has quite a bit of that that I'm forgiving because I love it. But again, I don't think it ever comes off as hateful. I don't even think it comes off as terribly ignorant. It's trying. It's its best version of trying as well as it can. I think it still probably has a lot of room for it to be better.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. As always, if you enjoyed this video, leave a like or a comment. Tell us what you think about Werewolf. Tell us if you'd like us to talk more about Werewolf and other World of Darkness things that we can talk about, because it's a world of darkness.
Of darkness.
Is there anything you'd like to plug your outro, Marty?
Oh, there's a video game coming out.
Oh, yes, that is the reason why we did this.
In a couple days, yeah, it's very boy-focused in a way that I mean as an insult. It's not making me excited about it, and I should be excited about it. And it's not necessarily their fault. I'm sure there's plenty of people who want to be bearded, weirdo, Fianna in tack vests. And I was like, well, it's weird you're doing a pack-oriented game as a loner. And then I looked at the description of the character, and of course he's a Ronin. He's a werewolf without a home because of some other thing. Of course. I just want you to... I just wish he had a second thought. It's fine. No, I get it. And it would be hard to tell that game. And I just wish you would have tried harder and told that game. That's easy for me to say. I can't make video games, so touche, you win. And look, I was watching some gameplay stuff and immediately was kind of like, yeah, cool, you're fighting an oil company. You build up your rage meter and then you go ape shit on like dudes in construction mechs and femori that burst out of their skin with weird tentacles and carapaces. And it's like, yeah, that's Werewolf. This looks Werewolf as hell. Mm-hmm. And I hope it's good. I will probably wait for it to be on sale because you're going to make me play a boy. I hate you. I hate that. It didn't even have an option. It's 2021, people. Just give me an option. You know, and hopefully it's a decent story. Again, this has to be a goddess worshipping tree hugger somewhere at their core. So hopefully it's cool. And I hope it is cool. And if any of this sounded cool to you, you might enjoy it right away more. And they are for sure selling to an audience. It's just not me. I just don't like boy stuff that much. But I hope it's good, and I am looking forward to trying it, and maybe we can do a recap of this if I come back and I'm like, actually, it's rad, or nope, it's what I thought it was going to be, and I didn't enjoy it that much. At the very least, though, it's going to have a pro-environmental message. You're fighting Pentex, you're fighting Endron, and a lot of the gameplay did look neat. So from a video game perspective, it looks good. So that's that. I think there's a natural tendency for this game to focus on that kind of testosterone-driven rage fuel. I think that's not all it's limited to, which is part of why I'm disappointed that the video game kind of focused on that. But it's also the most video gameable element. Sure. I think this is a game about passions. It's about like humanity laid bare in a way that's animalistic, right? Like that's what I think you could focus on and get out of it. It's people loving too much and hating too much and like everything too much. It's everything up to 10. You have a dice pool of 10 of it and you're going to roll it every fucking time. I think there's a lot to be said for it. I do love it. And when we come back to it and can focus a bit more on some of the things that are more worth loving than trying to get a good splattershot picture of it, I think that'll be helpful to it. So I hope you'll have us back to talk more werewolf stuff. And so, yeah, just to echo some of the stuff that Andy said, please contract a Weaver spirit to move over to the subscribe icon, which is actually something that's deteriorating the Earth somewhere probably every time you click it. So click the bell, too.
Mm-hmm. Might as well.
Might as well.
In for a penny, in for a
Damage
pound.
is already done.
Yeah.
You've got an iPhone. We've already established that. So what's another click? So yeah, do that for us. We'd appreciate it. And yeah.
We'll be back Wednesday with Star Chasers, Chasing Space. And Sunday is Odyssey of the Dragon Lords. Have a great night, everybody.